Welcome to the first task of the year. In this task, we are going to be working with Carlos and Clarita. Now, if you have done some mathematics vision projects tasks in Secondary Math 1 and Secondary Math 2, you will have worked with Carlos and Clarita before. So, a couple years ago, they started earning money by taking care of pets while their owners are away. Due to their amazing mathematical analysis and their loving care of the cats and dogs that they take in, Carlos and Clarita have made their business very successful. To keep the hungry dogs fed, they must regularly buy Brutus Bites, the favorite food of all the dogs. Carlos and Clarita have been searching for a new dog food supplier and have identified two possibilities. The Canine Catering Company, located in their town, sells 7 pounds of food for $5. Carlos thought about how much they would pay for a given amount of food and drew this graph. So he drew this graph right here. Now, I want you to pause this video right now, and based on the information and this graph, I want you to go through and answer questions 1, 2, and 3. And then I want you, once you're finished, to hit play again, and I want to go through these before I send you off to do the rest of the task. Okay, hopefully you paused and answered these, and now let's go over this together. So first of all, number 1 said, write the equation of the function that Carlos graphed. Now this is just a linear equation. You should be familiar with it. So since it's a linear equation, I'm just going to use y is equal to mx plus b. Slope-intercept form, okay, where b is the intercept, m is the slope. I can look over here and see that the intercept is going to be 0. So my b is going to be 0. And the slope, I'm going to find a point on here, okay, where it lands directly, nicely on one of my points. And I notice right here that at 7, 5, we go through that point exactly, 7, 5. So that means I know that the slope goes over 7 and up 5. And if you did rise over bend, it would be up 5 over 7. So the slope is equal to 5/7. Now in finding the slope, you also could have used the point 0, 0 and 7, 5, and then y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And you would have gotten the same thing. So when I plug those in, I get that it's y is equal to 5/7 x. Now Clarita thought about how much they could buy for a given amount of money and drew this graph. Okay? Now, first of all, let's pay attention to the differences here, okay? This one, the y-axis is dollars, the x-axis is pounds. Okay? They went through and found, based on how many pounds, the amount it would cost. Now, Clarita is looking at it a different way. She wants to figure out how much they can buy based on their money. So she found the graph that would be, based on how much money they have, how many pounds they could buy. That's the difference between these two graphs. So, for this one, I'm also going to use y is equal to mx plus b. Once again, b is going to be at 0 because that's where it crosses the y-axis. And the slope, I'm going to find a point that's on the graph, and that would be 5/7. But we find rise over run, so it starts at 0, and it goes up 7, and to the right 5. So my slope is 7/5. So when I plug that in, I get y is equal to 7/5 x plus 0, or just 7/5 x. Now, write a question that would be most easily answered by Carlos's graph. Write a question that would be most easily answered by Clarita's graph. What is the difference? Well, a question that would easily be answered by Carlos's graph is, how much would 7 pounds of dog food cost? And then I can just plug in 7 pounds of dog food and figure out how much it would cost. Because in this, the input is the pounds of food. So for Carlos, it would be, how much would 8 pounds of the dog food cost? How much would 5 pounds of the dog food cost? Okay, so how much would the dog food cost. For Claritas, a question I could ask would be, how much dog food can I buy with $5? So over here, dollars is the input. So how much dog food can I buy based on a certain amount of money? And what is the difference between the two questions? This one we start with pounds. How many? How much does £5 cost? Here, how many pounds can we buy with $5? Okay, the inputs are different. Here we figure out based on the amount of pounds. Here we're figuring out the answer based on the amount of money. Now number 4 asks for the relationship between the two functions, and how do you know? Now I know this is a throwback to last year, but the relationship between these two functions is that they are inverses. And how do we know this? Because their inputs and their outputs, or their x's and their y's, are switched. Here, pounds is on the x-axis, dollars is on the y-axis. Here, dollars is on the x-axis, pounds is on the y-axis. And if you go through and looked at the points, the x's and the y's would be flipped for each of the points on this graph. Okay, and that's how we know the inputs and the outputs, or the x's and the y's, are flipped. Now, use function notation to write the relationship between the functions. So if f of x is equal to, let's see, the first graph right here was 5/7 x, f inverse of x would be equal to this graph right here, 7/5 x. So remember, this little inverse, this little -1, means you are taking the inverse of this function. Another way, if you wanted to start with this one, you could have said g of x is equal to 7/5 x. Well, g inverse of x would be equal to 5/7 x. Now, I want you to go through and finish the remainder of this task, and then after you submit it, we will go through it together.